Hello there and welcome to this space. My name is Nisi and I am obsessed with learning and growing so that I'm able to show up as the best version of myself in every moment of every day. So on this channel, I share reflections on conversations, books, videos, podcasts, newspaper clippings, anything that I've been exposed to that has challenged me and my way of thinking. Now, they say it takes a whole village to raise a child. If you are into personal development, growth mindset, consider this your village. Make sure that you are liking, subscribing, following. It depends where you pick up this video, but just make sure that you are connected so that you don't miss out when I post a video. Now, today I'm talking about the book Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance by Angela Duckworth. And let me just start by saying that when I read this book, this was the first time I was confronted with the fact that I have a fixed mindset. Before, I had no sort of concept of having a fixed mindset versus having a growth mindset. I just thought that you were good or at things or you weren't. And through reading this book, I was able to kind of pinpoint even specific things that had happened during my childhood where this sense of having a fixed mindset was entrenched. And not because anybody wanted me to have a fixed mindset, obviously not, but I also think it's a sign of the times. I can't think of anybody who I knew anyway when I was growing up whose parents wouldn't kind of say things like, oh, you're so clever, or you're so great at that. It was your accomplishment that was praised, not the effort. I even distinctly remember a couple of years ago when my friends who had children, or maybe it was my aunts and uncles who had children, and they were telling me, in schools now, they don't have winners and losers. It's, you know, it's not the winning, it's the taking part. And I just distinctly remember, well, the only people who say it's not the winning, it's the taking part, it's the losers. You don't really hear winners saying it's not the winning, it's the taking part. So this book was really fundamental in terms of shifting my mindset and understanding that if you consistently do seemingly ordinary things, but you commit to these ordinary things, that's what potentially releases extraordinary results. So this book was groundbreaking for me in that way. So now, that being said, I have got my phone here with my notes. I read the book on Kindle, so I've got all my notes lined up. And I wanted to just share a couple of reflections with you, things that stood out to me and that contributed to this mental shift that I've experienced. So the first thing that I think we need to do is to look at the definition of grit according to Angela Duckworth. And she says, grit is passion and perseverance for long-term goals. One way to think about grit is to consider what grit isn't. Grit isn't talent. And when I say that this just spoke to my soul, especially because historically I've been quite a flaky person. I kid you not, I have played in excess of 5 or 6 instruments and not completed any of them and not kind of got to a great, even, you know, like sensible level in any of them. You know, I've just jumped from thing to thing to thing, and I kind of just had this impression of, well, if it just doesn't come to me easily, and if I'm not able to get it like that, that must mean I'm not good at it. I'm not talented at that thing, and therefore I need to move on. And actually, I remember when I even picked out this book, Grit, I read it a couple of years ago now, but when I picked the book up, I picked it up because I'd identified this trait within myself, the fact that I, you know, didn't have the sticking power, and I wanted to get some sticking power. And the thing that made me want sticking power is I'd just given birth. And for anybody who's given birth or who has, you know, adopted or embraced a young child in their life, somebody who, you know, is going to look up to you and believe in you, it is a sobering, like, I can't even say moment. Yes, it starts with a moment, but it's a sobering season in the sense that you really, well, for me anyway, I really started reflecting on, well, this person is not going to do as I say. They're going to do as I do. And what do I do now that I don't want them to copy? And my flakiness was the thing that immediately stuck out to me in terms of, I do not want my son to become a flaky individual. If he follows in my footsteps in believing that if I'm not naturally good at something, then well, I'm going to chuck it in, I'm going to feel like I've severely let him down. So I need to understand what makes people stick with things. Why is it I don't stick with things, and why is it some other people can and do stick with things? So again, let me just read that definition for you. Grit is passion and perseverance for long-term goals. One way to think about grit is to consider what grit isn't. Grit isn't talent. So passion and perseverance for long-term goals. And one thing that Angela Duckworth does is she also breaks down what does it look like if you've got the passion but you don't have the perseverance. So that's me, you know, fire starter. You'll speed down the runway and then you'll be tired in kind of no time. But then also, what does it look like? You've got the perseverance, but you don't have the passion. So that's, you know, you're sticking with something, but you're, you know, the Mona Lisa who's just doing something because, well, you started it. And even if it kills you and everybody else whilst you're doing it, you're going to do it. And neither of those is great. Neither of those will allow you to live to your full potential. As I mentioned, I'm really, really fascinated and obsessed with how we show up as our best selves in every moment. And that's understanding that we need to show up amplifying and decreasing different parts of ourselves depending on what that moment calls for. And through reading this book, I grew to realize that we need a combination of the two. We need the passion and we need the perseverance if you are truly going to manifest grit. And you hear this said by successful people in all walks of life. You know, they say, I didn't get into it for the money. I got into it because I absolutely loved it and I wanted to do it. And even when things got hard, I stuck with it because I loved it. And that just, it was, again, it was groundbreaking for me. And now as I say it, I think, well, this isn't rocket science, love. This is something that you maybe possibly could have worked out yourself. But hey ho, that's why we have books. That's why we have people kind of who study this stuff to see and to share and to bring the formula to the masses. And I, your humble servant, delivering the message to you too. So another thing that I wanted to share, just to kind of amplify the point that I've just made, Angela Duckworth references, is it Nietzsche or Nietzsche? Anyway, it'll be in the screen below. And what Nietzsche says is, our vanity, our self-love, promotes the cult of the genius. For if we think of genius as something magical, we are not obliged to compare ourselves and find ourselves lacking. To call someone divine means here there is no need to compete. Let me just read that again, because again, this is another thing. There was a lot in this book that just spoke to my soul. Our vanity, our self-love promotes the cult of the genius. For if we think of genius as something magical, we are not obliged to compare ourselves and find ourselves lacking. To call someone divine means here there is no need to compete. And I think this is so powerful, because how often do we do that in terms of staying within our comfort zone, because then we don't need to address the fact that maybe we aren't trying as hard as we possibly can. We don't need to address the fact that, yes, maybe we are a bit lazy. We don't need to address the fact that actually maybe committing to things is not our strength. For me, it was really an eye-opener in the sense that anybody we know who's achieved absolutely anything extraordinary, they are not extraordinary. They are just committing to do what we won't do. And I can't remember what famous basketballer it was that said it, in terms of, you know, he's not special. It's just he's willing to commit and to show up to practice and to do the drills over and over and over and over to an insanely over amount of times to make sure that he is able to perform excellently, consistently, even when his body and his mind don't necessarily feel like it, because he has trained himself to be able to do so. And I think a lot of times we can do ourselves a disservice by calling people, oh, that person's a genius, that person's so talented. Because even though, yes, it is great to give people their flowers and it is great to call out when people have done something extraordinary, but even more powerful, I think, is to recognize that this person has just committed. They are so committed to doing what other people don't do. And the call for action for me was, what am I going to commit to doing? What's my personal calling to something seemingly ordinary that when I do commit to it will make my life extraordinary, will make the encounters people have with me and the kind of light that I spread in this world extraordinary. And just to say this, it doesn't mean that we all need to go down, you know, in history books and things like that, but even, you know, just showing up for your children, committed. Your word is your bond to your children. I think that's extraordinary. There's a lot of people we can't trust in their word. You know, if you make a promise to yourself, and that's one of the takeaways that I took from this book. If I say to myself I'm going to do something, I absolutely have to do it. It's a non-negotiable, because if you cannot make a contract with yourself, if you cannot commit to yourself, who can you really commit to? And again, it's something seemingly ordinary but has massively changed my life, has massively allowed me to be able to do things that I never thought I could do. You know, I've become a morning person. I didn't think it was possible for me to become a morning person. Consistently, I'm up and out of my bed before 7 a.m. Usually I've gymmed before that time as well. And this is why having a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. So any mums, dads, carers out there, you will know that that is a miracle in itself, because they don't let you sleep, okay? I've literally just started getting a full night's sleep. Anyway, I digress. The point that I make is, when we are able to understand that the people that we call geniuses, extraordinary, they don't have two heads. They are like us. It should inspire us and encourage us to be who we were always meant to be. I'm not even going to say to be more, but just to be who we were always meant to be. Now, I could carry on talking about this book forever, so I'm just going to find one more thing that I'm going to share about you. If you like this video, let me know in the comments below, because I might have to do a part 2, 3, whatever it requires. There's a lot to get through in here, but I'll just share one final point before I close. Another point that Angela Duckworth makes is the fact that enthusiasm is common, but endurance is rare. And you know, when you feel like somebody's talking directly to you when they're writing something, I thought, wow, you know, this is me. I have tons of energy and enthusiasm when something starts, or when I've got a new idea. A week down the line, a month down the line. And obviously now, no, not so much, thankfully. I've really, by reading this book and, you know, making commitments to myself and putting certain habits in place, I can now say, I think quite proudly, that I would say that I have sticking power, and that I am somebody, my word is my bond, you know. Just as a side note, so I used to make appointments to meet up with my friends and then last minute cancel. I was notorious for that. Now I don't do that anymore. You know, even if I don't feel like it, if I've said I'm going to be somewhere, I will be somewhere, because I told you that I was going to be there. This point about enthusiasm being common, I think, again, it's not anything that's rocket science, and probably if you're one of those people who observes people and observes yourself, you've noticed this. But the reason why I wanted to mention this is because one thing that I took away from myself is to kind of temper that enthusiasm. And it's not to say that, you know, I'm now a Debbie Downer or anything like that, but I'm constantly aware, like, am I able to maintain this? Obviously, you're going to be really hype and excited when something starts, but what am I able to maintain? And I start with that end in mind. I think it's Steve Covey, 7 Habits of the Highly Successful Person. One of the principles there is start with the end in mind. I'll address that book in another video, because that's another great one. But, you know, what am I able to sustain, especially when I'm working with other people? And this I found especially powerful in work environments, because what I don't want to show up as is inconsistent. I don't want people to be exposed to super happy and enthusiastic Nisi one day, and then, you know, something else Nisi the other day. What can I maintain? And then I start out like that. So that was a couple of my reflections on the book Grit. Let me know in the comments below what has stuck out for you. Are you going to read this book? So do let me know if you have any recommendations, things that you want me to review, things that I should be reading. Otherwise, have an amazing day and take care of yourself. Bye.